All right, I see some folks jumping in. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to wait till the top of the hour and we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone who's joined so far. We're going to give it another 2 minutes to the top of the hour and we will get started. So thanks for hanging out with us until then. All right, we'll give it one more minute here and we'll get started. Thanks everyone for joining today. All right, I have the top of the hour, so we will go ahead and get started. Good morning, afternoon, and evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I see some familiar faces today. It's always good to see everybody. So welcome to our August 2026 iteration of the Detection and Highlights webinar. In this session, we're going to explore the latest detection innovations from the VMRay Labs team. We're going to cover 10 new VMRay Threat Identifiers, 4 new configuration extractors, and more than 50 new YARA rules designed to expand visibility across an evolving threat landscape. Also, be sure to stay tuned to the very end. Julian's going to cover a sneak peek of our H1 threat landscape report. That will be out later in the coming days, and we'll be sure to send that to all of you as well. I'm sure you've seen him before, but leading us through today's updates is Julian Wolf. He's a threat researcher at VMRay. He's done a few of these. We're excited to have him back. So with that, Julian, I will turn it over to you and let's go ahead and get started.
Great. Thank you, Tucker. And hi, everyone. As Tucker said, my name is Julian. I'm a threat researcher in VMRay Labs. I'm located in Germany. And I will go through this August webinar for the detection and intelligence highlights, which includes a lot of cool things. And with that, we will get started. So what's new in the latest releases? So of course, we have new VMRay Threat Identifiers, VTIs. We have new VTIs for phish kits specifically. We have a couple of new config extractors, of course, new YARA rules, which we will not handle in detail here because it's just a huge list. And then at the end, there will be a sneak peek review for the H1 threat landscape that will be published later this year. So the first VTI that we will go through is the detecting the usage of Web3 services used for dead drop resolution. So as many of you probably have seen and heard before, dead drops are very commonly used by malware. For example, Steam user profiles or Telegram user profiles, where for example, a profile name contains a C2 server name string. That's basically then queried by a malware or by a phishing service and then contacted for C2 communication. And we see this also with Web3 services like smart contracts, for example, blockchain services. And yeah, this new VTI detects this in Web3 services. Just a quick note, I will later also show some practical examples of what that looks like in the console. For now, we're stuck with the slides, and then I will switch later. Another new VTI that our detection team implemented is the detection of suspicious multi-step redirect chains. So redirects for web pages per se are, well, not malicious. They're used for various legitimate purposes, link tracking, URL shortening, and so on and so on. But however, we've also seen threat actors combine a lot of redirects in a chain to obscure the link's real destination. The goal for that is basically, to obscure what the real destination of a link is. Each additional step makes, the navigation path harder for users and for security tools to follow. And they usually also add a layer of legitimacy to a link, because often the first step is something that's not malicious. It's a trusted service that's being abused for that. So to conclude, multiple redirects do not prove that a website is malicious, but it's a nice trace and an indicator for an analyst to actually follow. Okay, where is this going? How many redirection steps are there? The next VTI that we want to talk about is detection of UDP peer-to-peer communication. That's something we've recently seen in 4PX, which is a botnet. Of course, other malware families do it too, but there we've seen it recently. 4PX is very old, I think more than 10 years now, but still alive. And I think a more recent variant uses actually UDP peer-to-peer communication. So the bots actually start talking to each other instead of a centralized C2 server. And that's what's being tracked here with this VTI. As a next VTI, we have detecting of connections to numerous SMTP servers. A lot of botnets also, they attempt to contact various new SMTP servers. Previously, we had a VTI that detected individual connections to SMTP server, and this one now focuses really on a large number of SMTP servers being contacted. Of course, a single connection is not suspicious, probably, maybe, because mail sending happens. But then, of course, if a sample contacts a large number of SMTP servers, this looks like something that should raise a score for a sample. Detection of backup command and control configs. I think this one also came from 4PX analysis. Basically, where malware that talks to a C2 server may have a backup C2 server or another means of communication of receiving more C2 domains or C2 addresses, strings that can be used for C2 communication in the end. And then can be provided an updated C2 configuration. And this VTI tries to highlight this. And I think we will also see this later in one of the examples. And then 3 new VTIs that combine like suspicious patterns for phishing emails. Phishing emails are always very, very hard to analyze in a sandbox because there's no execution happening usually. So a lot of it happens based on URL artifacts that can be found there or attachments that can be found there. But usually a phishing email has like very specific language and also other artifacts that is now a bit more covered with these VTIs. So one VTI here is detecting pressure and urgency in emails. So usually phishing emails, they will have a lot of like urgency and pressure, like specific keywords related to that. Then very often we also see like brand logos being used in phishing emails, like company logos, icons that are familiar, that want to make the email look trustworthy. And they're loaded from public image hosting services. So image hosting services that are legitimate, but in the context of a logo being loaded within this email makes it suspicious. And then there's also detecting emails impersonating popular brands. So a lot of times, as we all know, phishing emails, they try to impersonate popular brands. They will have some sender related to a brand, I don't know, Microsoft, for example, or within the email, there will be a name, a logo, something like that. And these 3 new VTIs, they will cover what we see in phishing emails and suspicious patterns in phishing emails, to just highlight these and earlier detect that an email is a phishing email without only relying on the URL analysis, for example, of the embedded URLs. Then there's new VTIs regarding phish kits. We call these meta VTIs because they combine a number of other VTIs that might not have a very high score, that might be low scores. And then if we see a couple of them and they have the correct order and artifacts, these meta VTI will detect actually the exact phish kit. And so we have 2 new meta VTIs for Sneaky2FA and Tycoon2FA. And as we can see here on the slide, the meta VTI for Sneaky2FA correlates network behaviors. It includes also like CAPTCHA challenges, responses, visual resources used by the page. And individually, all these things might be legitimate, but together they give a pattern associated with the phishing kit. And similar, we have it with the Tycoon2FA, like fake captures, difficult to read code, hidden code, something like that, communication with certain communication patterns that we see with this phishing kit. And then this will trigger this meta VTI that raises the score definitely for the whole page. And it can also assign a threat name to the page, which is really cool. So this relies less on actual like YARA matches on the phishing page and not like code analysis, but really goes into the behavior of the phish kits, which is really cool. And I think that's awesome work by our detection team. And then we have a couple of new config extractors. So as I mentioned, a few of these VTIs were related to 4PX, and now we also have a 4PX configuration extractor. Yeah, it's a worm that's been around since it says here 2010, so really long time. Nowadays, mostly spreads through email, and it's linked to extortion, spam, but also ransomware related activities. Yeah, that's it. Then we have 2 config extractors for net support management and Screen Connect, and well, that's not malware, you might say, and I agree, it's not malware. So those are legitimate remote management tools. But they're very commonly abused by threat actors as part of initial access operations in phishing operations, because they don't really raise many alerts. It's not malware. It can be classified as potentially unwanted applications, because a lot of IT departments also use those applications, but they're being very heavily abused for initial access. Yeah, even as a first stage payload, basically without any malware involved in between. So being able to detect those, get their configuration extracted is, it's a really cool progress, I think, that we have here, because we see it even behind initial access phishing URLs. And then also a new config extractor for ValleyRat. It's a C++ Trojan, and with backdoor capabilities and the classical stuff: persistence, evasion, remote control. And now, before we jump into the threat landscape for the first half of 2026, I want to jump into the console and just show some examples of what I just talked about with the VTIs. And we will start with a web analysis for ClickFix. I think all of you have probably heard of ClickFix before. You get a nice pop-up that says, hey, please use these keyboard shortcuts in this order. And in the end, it's a way to convince a user to execute code. So abusing the user for code execution. This is also an interesting example that I didn't know before. Usually they ask to press Windows R to get the run terminal. This one asks to press Windows X, which gives like Windows 10 shortcuts, and then to press I, which is then again the shortcut for a PowerShell terminal. So a slight modification here of what buttons to press. And then, of course, it keeps going the same, Control V and Enter. In this case, it's air traffic, and air traffic does what I was talking about in the beginning. It uses smart contracts as a dead drop resolver. This is a VTI with it. And what's cool here is we also have a configuration extractor basically for it that extracts the smart contract that's being abused. So we see this contract is on the Polygon mainnet. This is actually the contract that's being used. And well, this is very consistent for this specific contract for air traffic. So this is actually also a nice way to group threat patterns together by just looking at what smart contracts they're using and on what chain they are. And what air traffic does is basically the response from the smart contract is a C2 node, which is very interesting because it's not encrypted, so it's just encoded. There's no encryption happening here. So this can be easily just decoded into the actual C2 server that's being used here. So this, I think it gives a very nice picture here. So we have the smart contracts abused, and we actually also decode the response that's being returned here. And that's also what we see if you look here at the network communication. That's exactly then what we see the communication going to. I think that's a really nice example for how this dead drop resolver works and how it can help us. Of course, in many malware families, the smart contract return values, they are encrypted, and then it's not that easy. But for those where it's just can be decoded easily, this is a very nice addition to the VTIs, because it really helps. Instead of having to look manually at the PCAP and figuring it out, just getting it displayed here is really cool. Then I have a 4P example, which shows actually the peer-to-peer communication that I was talking about. So if we go into an analysis here, we see the process that's performing the UDP peer-to-peer communication, and we also see the port that's being used here. Of course, we also see all the other capabilities that is observed here about 4PX. But in this sample, the focus is on the peer-to-peer communication. And if we go into the network tab, we actually see here a lot of attempted UDP sessions to a lot of different IP addresses on port 40,500 that are not happening. It looks mostly unsuccessful. There's some successful communication here on port 80, but everything else seems to be mostly unsuccessful. But having this summarized here is a cool addition to the VTIs that we have. And another 4P example we have here that also delivers Xmbrick as a coin miner in the end. So this is actually is a multifamily analysis. We see the config extraction here, and we also see the other VTI that I mentioned retrieves the C2 configuration. So we see here it retrieves a backup C2 configuration from this URL, which, well, it actually is called backup domains. So that's very convenient for us. And we can actually also look at this a bit closer. We also see a lot of the other web requests here, where it's just pulling Xmbrick and other payloads. Here we see the GET request to this backup domains URL, and if we look at the PCAP stream, we can see there was a response, but the array was empty, so there was no no backup list of domains here in that case. That much for that. Another example that I really like as well It's an email, which, well, it comes with Microsoft account update from the sender. And this is what I tried to explain earlier. Email uses the name of a popular online service, so it's the masquerading. It masquerades. It tries to masquerade as Microsoft. It's clearly not from Microsoft, but yeah, having this VTI here already is a pretty good indicator. This leads to includes a URL. This email, which is another a phishing page, actually, a Microsoft phishing page. It's protected behind one of those CAPTCHAs that tries to avoid, is trying to avoid analysis. And then it's a very simple Microsoft phishing page. But then here, of course, we clearly get a malicious verdict on the email itself. It was not that clear, but as soon as we analyze the URL, we get a malicious verdict. Also, what's cool to see here is our Telegram phish kit config extractor. So we see a lot of phish kits that use Telegram from the client, actually implemented in JavaScript as a target for the extraction of the password and the data that was grabbed. So we were extracting that, and basically we can say which chat and which bot is actually this data is exfiltrated to, what API endpoint is used to exfiltrate the phish data. So that's cool to see if it works together like that in an analysis chain. And then we have one last example here, which is, it's a URL. So we have a web analysis here, and we already see a thread name Screen Connect. Because what this URL basically does is it downloads Screen Connect installer basically directly, and it tells the user, hey, click on it. I think it's like a gift card or a birthday card or something like that. That's the lure. But in the end, the downloaded file is a Screen Connect setup exe, which then is recursively submitted in VMRay. So this is not analyzed in the same session as the web analysis, but it's recursively submitted as a child sample. And yeah, here we analyze it as successfully as Screen Connect with all the properties that belongs to Screen Connect. And the config extractor that I was mentioning earlier, we see it here too. Basically the encryption key and the C2, the service that it reaches out to. And I think this is really interesting because this direct link from a URL to immediately to Screen Connect without any type of malware or anything in between first. It's interesting because as I said, no malware involved here technically. That's it for the examples in the console. And now I'm switching back to the slides for a sneak preview for the threat landscape report, first half of 2026, which will be published, I think, soon. Tucker, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in the next weeks. Yes. And we have some insights already that we can share. So this basically is like an overview of the threat landscape. It includes data from other vendors, cybersecurity organizations that they collect this data. So this is not our own data, but it's a big overview of the threat landscape. So what was happening this year in the first half, a lot of organizations were posted it on leak sites. So ransomware is still very strong, still trending up basically. And then we have the two very, very interesting, or actually kind of three very interesting in the middle figures that say a lot of incident response cases, they begin with identity. So that was basically Unit 42's assessment. Also, CrowdStrike says a lot of detections are malware free, which means that they involve like identity compromises and stuff like that. And then there's also Mandiant's assessment, which says exploits are leading at 32%. and that edge devices are still targeted very heavily with exploits. So that makes a very interesting threat landscape, because we know, well, it doesn't really scream malware yet, but if you think about how an identity compromise happens, it's usually it's like a phishing page or an info stealer. So there have been very famous cases where info stealers were involved on a personal device of someone, and stuff like that, where passwords get leaked, and then that basically is the begin of an identity exploit as well. And then there's, of course, also the AI thing, where some organizations are claiming that huge percentage of operations are carried out by AI agents to some degree. I've seen some recent assessments that say AI is more of a lure and very rarely actually being used as a as an autonomous agent, and the truth is probably somewhere in between. But that's what everybody's talking about. Then what else can we expect from the H1 threat landscape report? As I said before, ransomware evolves, fewer dominant operators driving a larger share of impact, and extortion increasingly relies on data theft and larger demands. Then we have faster exploitation, that, well, newly disclosed vulnerabilities are weaponized way faster, putting internet-facing systems and edge devices under greater pressure. As I already mentioned, identity attacks accelerate. So there's ClickFix, of course, where the user just executes code through social engineering, phishing, adversary in the middle, device code attacks. And then there's also the non-technical variants, which is basically just help desk social engineering, trying to get a password change, something like that. And a lot of these techniques are able to bypass traditional MFA. Then there is, well, the AI topics. AI becomes operational. Threat actors use AI, well, for automating some part of their attack chain, for example, to automate reconnaissance or social engineering. We've certainly seen some scripts, like initial access scripts, written with AI, just based on the way they're commented. It looks very AI. But I will also say it's not like new stuff. So it's similar to the stuff that existed before, just well, with more more comments included from AI, I would say. And well, then there's also the supply chain and cloud risk. So yeah, I mean, we've all seen that as well. Compromised cloud environment is a huge risk. Compromised package in some package repository is also a huge risk, because well, they are trusted. They're included in a lot of other software again. So this can cascade very quickly. Yeah, and all of this and more will be found in the H1 Threat Landscape report, to be published soon. And yeah, then there's some upcoming events that we will present at VMRay. And Tucker, that's your part.
Great. Thank you, Julian, for covering that overview. That was great. That will be releasing in the coming weeks here. We'll be sure to follow up with a full report to everyone that joined today's call if you have further interest in it and want to dive into it a little bit more. Just really quickly, we're going to cover our upcoming events. In EMEA, we're going to be at IECTIC, IKT, Lion Cyber, and JISEC in September. If you do want to schedule some time with us, please feel free to reply to the email with the recording that you'll get after this call, or just come straight through our contact us page, or reach out to your VMRay customer success manager. We're happy to meet with you and spend some time there, answer any questions you have. And then same deal in the US, we'll be at Billington Federal Cybersecurity Summit, and also Cyber SecCon, formerly Houston SecCon, in September. So lots of events coming up. And we'll also have members of the US team at GERCON in, I believe it's Michigan. So if you're at any of those events and want to meet with a VMRay team member, reach out. We're happy to meet with anyone. And yeah, jumping into the next slide. I believe that will wrap up our webinar today. So I will leave it to everyone for Q&A. We'll hang out here for a few minutes. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A section. We're happy to answer them. If not, thank you for joining today's call. Saw a lot of familiar faces. We're always happy to see everyone join these calls, and we hope you get as much out of it as we do. So we'll hang out for a few minutes. Thanks again, everyone. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. What is your booth number at GERCON? We aren't exhibiting at GERCON this year, but we will have Tim Langmaid, our regional sales manager there, and Robert Philkill, our solution engineer there. So if you reach out to me beforehand, I'm happy to connect you, or if you know either of them, reach out to them on LinkedIn, and we're happy to meet and set up some time with you there. All right, give it another 15 seconds for any questions if anyone has any additional. Cool. Quick technical question from a new user. I noticed the sandbox has 2 gigabytes of RAM. Shouldn't this be increased, or is this dependent on our contract? Julian, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, so I would just assume you're on cloud and not on-prem. I'm wondering why specifically you're asking. You're asking for performance reasons, yeah, or for evasion reasons, because for evasion reasons there is usually some faking going on, so it's not really transparent to the process how much we have. This is adjusted. And for performance, I think usually the results should be enough for most scenarios. Yeah.
Aaron, we will follow up with a recording to everyone after this. So if you'd like to review it, you're more than welcome to, but that'll be sent to everyone shortly. Awesome. I think that wraps up all the questions for today's webinar. Again, everyone, thank you for attending. We really appreciate everyone who was able to join us today. And thank you, Julian, for covering all of that. That was really, really great. I got a lot out of it. I enjoyed it. So we will hopefully see you all next month. Thanks again for joining today. Enjoy the rest of your day. All right. Bye, everyone.